Sophie, thank you so much for joining me on the AI6 podcast.
Thank you, Joanne. Delighted to be here.
So, first of all, introduce yourself to our viewers and our listeners.
So, I'm Sophie Sweeney. I am a lecturer at the University in Galway. I lecture in accountancy, finance, and tax. I am a chartered tax advisor with the Irish Tax Institute and a chartered accountant with Chartered Accountants Ireland.
So, obviously, I talk all things AI on this podcast. So, we're combining AI and your specialist subject. So, when people hear AI and tax, they often imagine something cold, robotic. But from your perspective and your experience, what does AI and tax actually mean in the real world?
I think that's a really funny choice of words because people often view accountants as robots anyway. So I don't know if there's going to be much of a difference between AI and tax and accounting. Um, but what I think the value is really enhancing efficiency and how we as professionals work in the industry. And it is an industry that's being disrupted by AI. Really, what it's doing is being used to automate repetitive tasks like data extraction and data analysis, and then interpreting that data. I suppose, though, for me, what it really means is a shift in what counts as expertise in the industry. And you probably have seen this yourself across other industries. People say the best way you can utilize AI is when you actually know what you're putting in and you know that what you're getting back is correct. So something a lot of people don't realize is that in most countries, including Ireland, you actually don't have to be qualified or regulated to call yourself a tax advisor. So unlike lawyers or accountants, there's actually no requirement to pass exams or be part of any professional body. Like myself, I am a member of the Irish Tax Institute, but to actually give tax advice, I don't need to be a member of the institute. Um, so I feel like as the industry or in the industry, we see a wide range of people, seeing opportunity, infiltrating and trying to take advantage that there is no regulation in this area. And you have really highly qualified experts and professionals who spend years studying and doing exams, but then also those who, offer simply to get a tax rebate. Now, I think with the disruption of AI in the industry, and that it is being seen and being used in tax administrations, and it is capable now of handling the compliance side of tax for companies and for individuals, and for tax administration. So, filing forms, doing some calculations, checking for errors, giving some, high level simplified advice. So nothing overly complex. And I really think what it's going to do is highlight the difference between someone who can just complete a tax return, but then someone who actually understands the underlying legislation, the case law, and really the context of what tax and tax legislation is. So I really feel like in the real world, it isn't just about automation. It can also be used as a filter, separating the professionals who really can give that value add to their client, really advise strategically, instead of just doing basic administration, which is a big shift in the tax world that I think a lot of professionals like myself is actually really excited for.
Yeah, so it's very clear that just like marketing, accounting, and finance is getting completely disrupted. So anyone could be a marketer, you're saying anyone could be an accountant or a tax advisor. But the industry's got to step up, and you're at that intersection of tax, finance, and accounting. How do you think it is going to step up, having to reshape itself in the AI age?
It's funny, it already has, which is fantastic, and people don't often view that accountants or tax professionals would be, at the forefront of adoption or early adoption. And it is more prevalent in the industry than people actually know. The KPMG, so one of the big four accountancy firms, they had a 2024 Chief Technology Officer Outlook study, and they found that the growing use of Gen AI by tax functions um, is already being used by around 29% have already deployed Gen AI. 26 at that time in 2024 were already exploring its use. And I can imagine now we're nearly halfway through 2025 that it probably has increased. And again, it's probably surprising in the fact that, tax professionals are forthcoming because, accounting and tax is seen as one of the professions that is feared to have their jobs replaced by AI. And what we're seeing in the industry is that automation of repetitive and rules-based tasks. AI can extract information like, from invoices and receipts and input that data into accounting software, tax software, they're really manual and time-consuming tasks. An anecdote, I did an internship in a very small accounting firm in Donegal. And before I actually did my leaving cert, and it was to figure out if I really wanted to go into the accounting industry. And one thing I was taught, or the first thing I was actually taught, was a bank reconciliation. And I had to manually go through the client's checkbook, matching stubs, ticking off each line, reviewing the corresponding receipts, trying to make it balance. It was so meticulous and it was so time consuming. But it really gave me an understanding of the process and how it worked, and the value of doing that work then, and how it landed itself into the next steps of the accounting process. But now AI can do this, in seconds. And I probably spent a whole day doing it. So there's a lot of potential there, but we also need to take a step back and say, well, actually, we do need to understand the underlying purpose, and have the knowledge to then review what AI has done to make sure it's correct. Because if you don't know the fundamentals of something as simple as a bank reconciliation, how will you know then if it is incorrect? So it's not just automation. I feel like it's augmentation of what we're actually doing. It's reshaping how we make decisions and not just how we do the tasks. And professionals in the current environment need to be comfortable interpreting the AI outputs, applying their judgment, not just running the reports or not just knowing what prompts to use, I think.
And what do you think we can learn from the countries that are using AI for tax purposes, or is there anyone ahead of the curve?
Um, there definitely is. There's actually quite a lot of countries that are ahead of the curve. One country that I really like is, I never thought I'd say this, is the French tax administration. They use AI really innovatively. I think that they use it to calculate the level of rents that they expect should be declared in people's income tax returns. So this is in relation to property owned and property rented out. And they've built this model that estimates the rental value of each property. And then it uses machine learning to analyze the link between the amount of rent declared, the characteristics of the actual property. So if it's really luxurious or if it's quite basic. And then also the socioeconomic data of the neighborhoods and the level of income that people are earning in that area. Then that data is compared to what the landlords are actually reporting in their income tax returns. And it's throwing up flags that then a human will review and say, well, why is this that their reported income is not the same as our expected, based on this data? So that's quite a good one. In Netherlands as well, the Dutch Tax and Customs Administration, they use machine learning to do web scraping. So that's to gather and match data with pre-existing information that the tax administration already has. What it does is it identifies interconnected websites to determine who actually owns these websites and where they're operating in the space. And then these unknown taxpayers or people who aren't being compliant again, are flagged. So things like that, if you were to do it manually, would take a lot of time, a lot of human effort. But globally, we are quite far along. I mean, especially in Europe, and Ireland really is part of the trend. The revenue commissioners have been using AI for fraud detection and prioritizing cases for several years. So it's not really experimental anymore. It's actually quite operational.
And, I work a lot with government and public service, and obviously transparency, fairness, and ensuring that there isn't bias inherent in AI are huge concerns. How are those concerns considered in AI, and how is in tax rather, and how is the sector managing it?
Yeah, I think it's really critical when it comes to AI and tax because the systems don't just do the numbers, they make decisions that are going to affect real people and businesses. And I always come back to the idea that AI shouldn't be about catching people out. Even with tax shouldn't be about catching people out. It's there and it serves its purpose. So we have like chatbots that really can help people. And if you think about chatbots, so the Australian Tax Authority have a chatbot, and they've been using an AI chatbot since 2016. And also the Spanish tax authorities were one of the first to introduce it. And I think if we kind of think of it that way, that the tax administration is putting out this chatbot to help you. They're not trying to catch you out. It's there as a resource that can answer your questions. So AI can make tax more accessible and user friendly, and tax can be quite scary. And that's something I'm really passionate about because I'm actually involved in a student led free tax clinic, which is doing similar work but on a human element or on a human aspect. That's at the University of Galway. And we work directly with people who, fall through the cracks. There's marginalized individuals, low income workers, students, especially our international students who have no idea what the Irish tax landscape and don't know what their obligations are. And what we do is guide them through their obligations and really encourage trust in tax as a public service. So AI really won't replace that, but I do think it can complement it. We just need to use it in a smart way that can help us identify, who needs the support, how can we deliver the guidance faster, make it more accessible, reduce, the complexities that come with the landscape that is tax. And that's, I think, where the future of fair tax really lies, combining the smart technology with ethical, human-centered approach.
So, in yesterday's episode, it was about, AI won't take your job, but the people with AI skills will. And that was quoting the CEO of NVIDIA, Mr. Huang. And you're teaching the new generation, and many of them will be AI first. So it gets me thinking, and even looking at my sector, will the AI first graduates who are adept at AI be taking the jobs of experienced professionals who have decades of lived experience? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. What I'm seeing in the classroom is a mix from students of curiosity and caution, and they want to know how to use it, but they also are kind of reserved, like, well, what's the point of me learning this if AI is going to do it? And that's something we're trying to figure out and how to educate them, and also where does the responsibility lie? Is it in third level education, or is it in the workplace when they go in and see it in practice? And I think it's probably a mix of both. um it's a valid fear wondering if AI is going to replace your job, but it's not going to replace your judgment, your ethics, those client relationships. It just replaces tasks and it doesn't replace the thinking. And I do think that this generation and my students are uniquely placed to thrive in this, tech driven profession. And what I really like is they're not afraid to challenge the status quo. They're not afraid to ask the questions of why are we doing it this way? Does this mean that it is the best way because it's been done like this 100 times, or is it the best way because it's cheaper? Their curiosity, I think, is really going to challenge the industry. And I do think we'll have, the digital natives will create a better profession, and with good ethical foundations, I would like to think, and lead a change in the industry.
So clearly, you believe that it's inevitable that AI tools will be used in the classroom and in the workplace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Now, I do think there's no point in writing off something like Excel. I think it's really stood the test of time, and I love it. And despite all the digital transformation we've seen, it's still really central to what we do in tax, finance, and accounting. And Excel isn't going on anywhere. So if I was going to give a piece of advice to my students, and I always do say it, it's not just about being AI literate, it's about coming back again to those basic principles, and something like Excel. And Excel has now AI integrated into it. So kind of combining all the basic skills you have, and bringing it together. But you don't need to code or build models with AI. Just understand a little bit of how it works, know its limitations, use it responsibly, use it ethically, have integrity, and just have combine, technical competence and your critical thinking skills. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, we're going to continue to add real value and just grow every single industry, in the next 5 to 10 years.
So I always say we're very fortunate that we're living through the greatest technological revolution of our time. We're living through a piece of history. And I'm always looking ahead. But for you to look ahead, what's your biggest hope, but also your biggest concern about AI and tax over the next 5 to 10 years? Because it's moving fast. We could even say 5 years.
Yeah. Um, I do hope AI will make tax systems fairer and more accessible, take away the complexity, the fear, and the burden, especially people who don't have access to professional advice. Unfortunately, there is this, um, you know, people who can afford it, right, can get the tax advice, but often those are the ones who don't need it, and won't benefit the greatest from professional advice. So if it's used ethically, I really do think AI could help reduce inequality, and maybe identify, supports that people might not realize that they're eligible. My biggest concern, I think, would be if we rush into it without enough thought around governance, transparency, regulation, and fairness, and a lot of the biases as well that comes with the systematic biases that AI is learning from. And then if that technology is applied blindly without the safeguards and human oversight, without questioning the data it's trained on, then I think the risks reinforcing the problems we're trying to solve, like the bias, like inequality, like lack of access, could become more prevalent. So it's a pivotal moment in, AI supporting the tax system, but also only if we build it thoughtfully with ethics and inclusion really at the center.
I just looking at your sector, the fact that you've got industry experience at all levels of industry, that tax, accounting, finance, and now in academia. It's quite exciting for you to look ahead at the research that you'll be doing, because the research is needed, right? We can't have the policy without the research. The research informs the politicians. So I guess you'll be doing that research.
Absolutely. And I think the way the research needs to go, and people might think, research can be quite longitudinal in nature. But it's not about looking at doing research specifically on AI. It's about doing research on the impacts of digital transformation and technology on a broader scale, so that the research will lend itself to stand for years and years to come, even when there is technology that has been, developed in the future that is completely different to what my research might be now, but that the underlying principles and the academic literature will lend itself really nicely to then how policy is implemented in the future. Because if I was to start, doing a piece of research today specifically on I mean, the results, by the time I got my results and analyzed my data, it could be completely different technology that we're seeing in the future. Like you said, it's growing exponentially. So definitely challenging one, but it's an exciting industry to be working in.
Yeah, I feel your pain around the longevity of research. As somebody who's coming to the end of writing their book on AI and marketing, I'm hoping that it's still relevant by the time it hits the shelves. Sophie, fascinating conversation. Obviously, tax is not my area specialty, but I love speaking to people in all disciplines on how AI is disrupting. So thank you so much for joining me. But before I go, people will want to know how they can connect with you if they've got an interest in hearing more about what you do, or they want you to speak. Where are you going to direct them?
To my LinkedIn, it's Sophie Sweeney.
Fantastic. Well, Sophie Sweeney, thank you so much for joining me on the AI6 podcast.